Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us today. It is October 24th, 2017, 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. We want to thank you for joining us, and we also want to thank our affiliate, KEPW.org, for carrying our show, and also for carrying Libby Halevi's show, Nuclear Hot Seat. It's very important to our entire planet that people that are on our show and this information gets out. I'm super delighted to have a friend of our show back on the air with us today. It's Donna Gilmore from SantaNofreeSafety.org. We don't have much time, so I'm just going to get right to it. Hi, Donna. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I really appreciate it. First, I want to talk about your website because it is a treasure trove of information for people who are concerned about these issues to use it as a tool. So why don't you remind people where they can go to your website and how to use it and what's there?
It's SantaNofreeSafety.org, SANONOFRE Safety, SAFETY.org, Santa Fe Safety. And it's designed to be an educational tool and a action tool for people to use for issues related to nuclear power and nuclear waste. My biggest focus right now is the nuclear waste issue because that's a critical issue right now. The website has action items. It's not an opinion website. It's not a tree hugger website. It is information with scientific and government links to everything that's on here. And it has a section for action items, getting city council resolutions passed about issues, handouts available. All the information is there for people to use. There's people that use this that I've never met. It's designed so you can, take what you want and go and do whatever action you want with it. One of the things that we recommend is you start at the grassroots and get city councils to pass resolutions about the safety of waste in your community, and you'll see sample resolutions that we have effectively used for that. And right now, there's a couple of action items. I try and put the most important thing on the homepage because people don't want to, look with a short attention span world, So can I start on the number one action item right now?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Okay. All right. Right now, this week, there's a bill called, they refer to it as the Shimkus Bill, H.R. 3053, Nuclear Waste Policy Amendment Act of 2017. It's being marketed as the bill to get the waste out of your community. but it really is not going to do that, unfortunately. I took 2.5 days to analyze this bill. It's written in a very sneaky way, so you don't really understand what it's doing. And they've sent out information to the congresspeople that is very misleading.
Isn't that the way they always are, though?
Well, this bill will preempt or jeopardize the existing federal, state, and local water and air rights, and rights to oversight, input, transparency, and other rights. It's really, it's basically taking away our democracy and taking over our rights to clean water. And they even have an eminent domain section in there where they can take over land, take over utilities.
Wow.
It's a really, really bad bill. Wow. And the way they hide this is they will modify a section of the law, and not mention that by doing that they've changed the meaning of another section of the law. This is it's very, very sneaky. And unless you do what I do and you spent 2.5 days with it, you wouldn't know all this stuff.
Well, I opened it up, and to be honest, it will say something like replace Section A of the former section. They refer to the former bill, paragraph A with if and with paragraph A with instead of saying with, they'll say in or something like that. It's very technical. They don't actually spell out what they're going to do. It's really confusing.
But the flyer that I managed to get my hands on, what they're telling people it does, and they're hiding information that's in the bill. So they don't even, and Democrats and Republicans are supporting this bill without even knowing what they're doing. One of the things it does is it replaces Section 143 of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. This is the act that talks about safety requirements. So they basically are gutting nuclear waste storage and transport safety requirements that we need to prevent radioactive leaks. They're actually taking out the safety requirements out of the law.
Wow.
And when I contacted the office, I contacted Shimka's office. I said, why are you taking all the safety requirements out of the law? Oh, well, we don't need them because the NRC just does an excellent job, so we don't need all these extra laws, And that's totally
Did they
not
really
true.
say that to you?
Yes, they really said that to me. And Shimkus has a letter on his website saying what an excellent job the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is doing. And, for all I know, they believe this. I mean, these Congress people, who are they surrounded with? They're surrounded with all the pro-nukers, the vendors, the utilities, the energy companies. That's what they're surrounded with, those kind of people. They're not going to tell them the truth. I mean, I met with former Chairman McFarland, and she was the safety-conscious commissioner at the NRC that Obama appointed, and she didn't even know that the canisters that her staff was approving to store nuclear waste in can't even be inspected, but are vulnerable to cracks. She did not know that until I had a conversation with her.
Look what they did with JASCO and 311. JASCO was jumping up and down about what was going on in Fukushima, and they got rid of him. Do you know? Really, honestly.
Yes, that is another problem. That it's multiple problems. There's a level of ignorance at the decision-making level. The decision makers and influencers don't know the truth, and because we're trying to take on their propaganda machine. What I have found is effective is I make sure everything that I say, everything that I write, I have their own information to use against them. I have NRC documents. I have the nuclear labs, their own reports that the utilities use and the NRC uses and the Department of Energy uses. So I get them with their.
One of the things you have on your page that's really helpful to people to understand what's going on in their community is your drop-down menu on nuclear waste. you have a drop-down menu that talks about waste, right? And the drop-down menu has a storage container where the storage what's it called? You know what I'm talking about? It's that little chart that we gave out last year at the PELC that shows where all the nuclear storage plants are, how many they are, if they're bolted or welded.
Oh yes, I've actually moved a lot. I actually have copied a lot of the stuff on the nuclear waste page to the home page, so you don't even have to go to the nuclear waste page unless you want to look for a lot of technical documents.
Because that is really, that shocked me. We handed that out last year at the PELC, what's it called, Pacific Environmental Law Conference that you participated with us at the University of Oregon, and that one document kind of shocked me. Just taking a real deep look at it.
Is that the 2-page handout sorted by state of all the waste located in the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a very popular document. Once people know that these thin wall canisters that the majority of the utilities are using to store nuclear waste, once they realize that most are a 1/2-inch thick stainless steel that is subject to short-term cracking, and the industry has no way to find cracks once the fuel's loaded in there, no way to repair, no way to monitor to prevent leaks, and the most horrible thing is they have no plan to do anything after it leaks. So it's crazy. It's actually crazy, and
yeah.
I realize what their real plan is. This is something new. We hadn't finished talking about 3053, but I guess we can get back to that. Let me just go over this since it's here. I have a copy of a handout that the Areva makes thin wall and thick wall storage casks for waste storage casks, and the utilities in the United States, they only want to buy the thin wall ones, mostly 1/2-inch thick. They're called new homes, or even new homes. The French and most of the rest of the world use thick wall metal casks that are anywhere from 10 to 19 3/4 inches thick. That's what the rest of the world is using, because they care more about profits than safety here. They've gotten, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is really the Nuclear Rubber Stamp Commission. They've gotten away with using inferior products that could start leaking in, after 17, 20 years of use. And nobody's dealing with this, which is one of my main focuses. After I make, that's what I was going to tell you. So anyway, I've been, myself and others have been on this fight to get them to quit using these thin wall canisters and to switch to the thick wall casks. And for years we've said, what are you going to do if there's a leak? What are you going to do if there's a leak? And they would give us one answer, and I would research, and it would turn out to be BS. And they give another answer. I mean, basically, I've played this game with them where they say something, I research, find out it's not true, and now we're down to the fact they have nothing. Well, I found a document last week at Areva New Homes, which makes the horizontal.
I see it. It's on you put it on your front page, didn't you?
I think I did, yes. And
called Areva Newhouse Amendment Number 4 Request to NRC.
Yes, they're actually planning to hide the leaks. They have Areva submitted a document to the NRC. They're planning to submit an amendment, and it was done at the request of the San Onofre, Southern California Edison here. Is what somebody that listened into that meeting was told when they asked, and I can actually confirm this with an employee at Southern California Edison. They only want to have to measure radiation levels at the peak radiation levels at the inlet vent. Let me back up and explain here. The thin wall canisters, a lot of radiation could go right through the walls of those, so they have to be stored in big, thick metal or mainly concrete casks or some kind of overpack. The problem is that overpack has air vents in it because the canister, the fuel is so hot, has to be cooled by convection if it's not underwater in pools. And so you have an inlet air vent where air comes in, and then the hot air goes out, the other end to keep it cool. And they only want to measure and report peak levels from the inlet vent. And I asked an employee, I said, do you know about this amendment? He goes, yeah, this is at San Onofre. I said, do you know about this amendment? Yeah. I said, well, they only want to measure peak levels from the inlet vent and the door, which is ridiculous. But and he goes, yeah. And I go, well, if there's a through-wall crack in that canister, won't most of the radiation be going through the outlet vents, with the airflow? And he says, yeah, very calmly. That was the conversation.
Wow.
That was
well, you know what? In their document that you have on your front page, I was scrolling down. The need for amendment with their last item says elimination of cause of spurious alarms. We don't need to be no more pesky alarms.
Well, and that's the other thing. Oh, and right now the requirement for every nuclear plant is to inspect these air vents daily because they can become clogged up with bird nests and all kinds of debris and critters that can actually make it in, but they don't make it out. It's kind of like check in but don't check out because they'd be bombarded with radiation. I guess if they do make it out, they'll wander around anywhere. But anyway, that's a side note. So they're required right now to make sure those air vents are kept. And, there's no clogging in there that's going to cause the temperature to go up. And that's been a requirement for decades. And now, in that same amendment, they want to quit checking that, and they want to rely on temperature monitoring. They have a monitor that's close to the system that tells if the temperature around not on the canister itself, but around there, if the temperature goes up at a certain level, they get an alarm, that the temperature's gone up. Now, what they can do about it, if the vents are clogged, they can clear the vents, but other than that, they don't have a plan if it goes up, if it's not that. But anyway, so they have an alarm set for a certain temperature level. And they want to raise the level of that alarm. They don't want the alarm to go off at that temperature. They want it to go off at a higher temperature.
I'm reading as we're speaking. It is shocking.
Yeah. And, at Calvert Cliffs, which has
limits are 80 degrees Fahrenheit rise in 24 hours for 24 PT1 and 30 degrees Fahrenheit rise in 12 hours for 24 PT4. I have no idea what that means, but the reality is what they're talking about is they want an 8%. They want an 8 degrees rise in 24 hours and a 5 degrees rise in 12 hours. The small temperature increase limit. Yeah. This is what they're saying. The small temperature increase limit for 24 PT4 results in spurious alarms necessitating visual inspections to ensure there is no blockage.
Gee, now tell me, why have they been using, at Calvert Cliffs, they have been using those PT numbers you're reading, those are the model numbers of the thin wall canisters, two different model numbers.
Thank you for that clarification. So 24 PT4 is the canister type.
Yes, yeah. Okay. The PT1 doesn't have high burnup in it. The PT4 is approved for, is it 4 or 2?
This is a 4.
4, okay. PT4 is high burnup. They can use that's when they started being.
And they have PT1. That was the other one you heard was PT1.
I think that's the one where they don't have high burnup fuel in it. But
this is shocking. And the NRC is seriously considering this, Donna?
Oh yeah, actually they have approved this. I think they've already approved this for a different model. And when I read more details on this, there's another model that they've already approved this for. So yeah, Nuclear Rubber Stamp Commission should be their real name,
This is what's shocking about what this change wants to do. in terms of just the alarm? They're
here's
basically,
the thing.
this admits that they're just putting radiation into the air at every single site where they use these canisters.
Well, okay, see, if you look on that 2-page sheet, you'll see that Calvert Cliffs has one of the oldest new home systems. And I'm going, it's over like over 25 years. I don't remember the exact number of years, but it's over 25 years. And I'm going, why isn't this thing leaking? It should be leaking by now. I'm not sure if they have hydraulic fuel there.
That's in Maryland, right?
Yeah, that's in Maryland, right where NRC's headquarters is, in Maryland. So how ironic. And I'm thinking, gosh, I don't understand it. And then I'm finding out that they've already had requests in for that one to change the level for the alarms going off. That's already happened in the past. And so it dawned on me, they don't want to measure the peak radiation levels at the outflow where the radiation would be going. They want to raise the temperature so the canister can be hotter. The only conclusion that I could see is their real plan is to hide leaking canisters. I lost a night's sleep when I realized this, this is what they're actually planning to do. And then Southern California Edison.
Well, that makes sense if they're planning on passing HR 3053. Why tell anybody? What's the point? What's the point of putting it on a truck and allowing a truck to leak?
HR 3053. Also, when the idea there is to transfer ownership from these utilities, these nuclear facilities, to the Department of Energy, and they call them MRS agreements. Okay, and that all liability they no longer have any liability at all. They're off the hook. And with these MRS agreements and the facilities, whether it's right on site where it's currently sitting, or if they manage to transport these canisters to a consolidated interim site, either way, we will have no right for public input, for transparency. We will have no right to know what's going on, period. No radiation levels, all the information that I have now, where I know what kind of canisters they're using, and I know what's going on, that will be gone. They basically are taking away our democracy with this bill. Our foundational democracy, where we have to have the knowledge in order to have a good democracy. And I listened to 3 hearings, they didn't call them hearings, but they had 3 meetings at the Energy and Commerce Committee where this bill came out of. Shimkus is the chair. Not once did they talk about these issues. Not once did they talk about or limiting safety requirements. They didn't even talk about those issues. They did talk about the water rights issues. There was a section in there about water rights in the Congress people from the Southwest that are very concerned with their water rights. They managed to take out the section that specifically addressed water rights. But what they didn't realize is there's another section in the bill that talks about taking away. It's already in the law. It's in the law. There's a section in the bill about water rights, and they just expanded it. At any rate, they in a sneaky way managed to modify the law so that they have the ability to take utility rights, which would include water, but they don't use the word water. So it was kind of a sneaky way.
This bill will allow them to take away utility rights also?
What's that?
This bill will allow them to take away utility rights.
Yes, that's it. That's under the permanent repository. The bill covers permanent repository and interim storage. They call it monitored retrievable storage facilities. However, they're not required to be monitored or the fuel be retrievable. So it's really a misnomer. It's one of those things where they use words that mean the opposite.
Donna, why do you think that our elected officials are jumping on this and acting like
they don't know? They don't know what's in the bill.
I have faxed them. You know what? After our first conversation, I got your 2 information pages, And I signed that letter. I faxed him your information, your short. I faxed him several pages. I called up and said, look, I don't think you guys are aware of how harmful this is. I'm going to fax you information.
What did they say?
Thank you very much. We've shown it to him. And he is still on. None of them have changed. In fact, more people have signed on. It started out with something like 29. Now it's like over 100.
Yes, you're right.
They're just like jumping on it like it's no big deal. Clay, Representative Clay from St. Louis is on it.
Here's what I see happening. If you want to get reelected and you oppose a bill that promises to get waste out of your community, you could lose your next election.
Look,
that's
either that
or they're not believing the information that you're sharing with them. It's either they don't believe it. But did you find out if he's sponsoring it? Did he sign on as a sponsor?
No, he's not a co-sponsor. Well, yes, he is a co-sponsor. Actually, he signed on as a co-sponsor.
Okay, all right. Well, he's a co-sponsor then. Okay, so yeah, because this is what I'm seeing is they're afraid to oppose it because they're going to lose their next election because somebody's going to come out and say, well, he wouldn't even vote. He voted against the bill that was going to get waste out of your community. You see. I get that, but you know what he needs to do is build his campaign around standing up to this so people know what the truth is. This is what's wrong with our elected officials, is they let these like Hollywood types or New York types design their commercials and say, we know what's right. We need to, especially in St. Louis, I find it egregious that nuclear waste has been 100%, we cannot talk about it. And don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Well, animals are dying up all over the oceans here now. There's over 50 groups and organizations that signed on opposing this bill. The only other thing I could think is that maybe they're not believing the information that you shared. That would be the other thing, or they're believing that the NRC is actually doing their job. Is he a Republican or a Democrat?
Oh, he's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat. Okay. Yeah, we really
I think you're right about that but this is the thing. I know that there is a lot of lobbying going on in the Senate. Like they're seeing that this is probably going to pass the House, but I think there's a lot of lobbying going on in the Senate to stop it. That's what I've heard.
Well, I hope you're right, but we shouldn't take any chances. So,
I agree, and I still think this is a learning tool for those elected officials to realize that nuclear waste is a catastrophic thing that we are ignoring.
Well, I like to look at the opportunity in any problem, and the opportunity here is, these elected officials, they have a lot of different issues they have to deal with, but now they have to make a vote. Now they have to vote. So now is the time they're going to be paying attention to this issue. So it's an opportunity to educate them on, what's really going on and how the waste is actually currently being stored and how close we are to having these. Each of these canisters, just one canister, contains about as much highly lethal radioactive cesium-137 as was released from the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. It's not a reactor in a can, but it's the amount of cesium-137 that was released from the Chernobyl that's still going around the world and contaminating areas
Donna,
all
I have
over.
To say, I'm a little bit shocked understanding that these vents allow. I thought that I did understand the casks had to sit in another container, but I was not aware that the vents just naturally. So you're telling me every one of these containers are releasing radioactivity? Period.
Well, you get certain. There's certain radionuclides that will go through the air vents without a leak. When you have a through wall crack, then you're talking. That's when you're talking more other. That you're going to get a lot more in different types of radionuclides. So
it's not that it's a tight container where there's now. Is this true across the board? I mean, what do they do the same thing in Europe?
For the thin wall canister systems, they have these concrete or metal, mainly concrete overpacks. Now at Humboldt Bay, they put their thin wall canisters in thick wall metal bolted lid cast, single lid cast. It's mainly carbon steel. I think there's some lead in them. Their fuel at Humboldt had cooled over 25 years. It was not high burnup fuel, so it did not need to have any convection cooling. So they didn't have to use air vents. So if they don't allow this fuel to cool long enough in the pool, they have to have the air vents. And so it's actually gotten, what's happened that's even worse. Holtec is in this race to the bottom of safety. Chris Singh is the president of the company. And he has gotten approved through the NRC. He's loading, he can load 37 fuel assemblies in one container. Usually, it used to be a much smaller number, 24.
Hi, UCY.TV. This is Lonnie again. We had a little snafu and the radio went down. Jules just texted me and said their ISP went down for a minute. So it's back up. So, yeah. Great. Okay, so now we're good. And I completely lost my train of thought of what you were talking about. I know we were talking about the canisters. Hold on just one second, Donna. Hold on. I am going to end. Are we on? I don't know. Let me hang on. I don't think Jules can hear us. Let me see if she can hear us. Let me see if she can hear us. Hold on just one second. I think we're on two separate calls. It doesn't look like we're joined. That's why, you guys. I'm sorry to be such a pain in the neck, but it doesn't look like we're connected. So hold on. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, good. So about the thin wall canisters, now I can relax. Donna, you know what? They can only hear me. They can't hear you. So I was correct. Let me see if I can bring you into the group. Yeah, she just told me. So look, why don't you just let me give you a call right back? Hang up and I'll hold on. Hold on, you guys. Sorry about this little snafu. I'm going to just add Donna back in so we can get her back in on the call. There we go. Okay. All right. Well, I think we should have her on in just a second. Hold on. Sorry for this snafu, you guys. This is such a drag.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now it looks like we're all connected. And thank you, Jules, for helping me and helping us see it. Okay, great. Okay, so let's get back. Here we are.
Okay.
We're talking about the overstuffing these nuclear...
Well, all right, let me back up a little bit so we're covering it. What's been going on in the nuclear industry is they've been loading hotter and hotter fuel in these thin wall nuclear waste canisters, and Holtec seems to be taking the lead to push the limit on what's safe. If you load fuel that's too hot, you can damage the fuel inside, and so now they're up to 37 fuel assemblies in one canister. Before it was 24. Before you had to cool the fuel up to 25 years. Now they want to have it just be a few short years that they cool hotter fuel and put it in these canisters. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission engineering staff said that Holtec didn't prove their case, that it was safe, but the NRC rubber stamp commission managers overruled the staff, and so instead what got approved was, well, we don't have the evidence, so we'll let you go ahead and load this hot fuel in the canister and see who was right, see if it works. Now, how they're going to know it works, or, And then what are they? And what they didn't say what they're going to do if it didn't work. They've got no plan on these facilities. If they have a problem canister that they loaded, it's too hot, they weld that sucker shut. They do not have a plan to deal with any problems.
So they just want to ignore all the problems that nuclear waste causes. They want to just pretend like nuclear waste is no harm to human health at all.
They're just pushing the limits. And then I don't know if people heard the part of the call where we talked about the fact that Areva, another company that makes both the thin wall and thick cast, but mainly the thin wall for the United States, they've requested that they only want to measure radiation levels from the air vents where the cool air comes in, and not the outlet cooling vents where if we had leaks, the highest radiation levels would be going out, and they want to stop measuring those and not report those. So well,
I think that's where we were off the air. Fortunately, it was like me being appalled that every one of these small containers. Let me get clear with this again. Each one of these thin cast containers are in an additional container that has.
They're not small. They're not small. You know, they're maybe about
big.
the size.
I mean thin wall. I mean thin wall, not small.
Yeah, thin wall. Mostly
but they're sitting inside an additional container that then needs to be vented 24 hours a day. And when they're talking about leaks, because these things naturally vent radioactivity because they're so hot, that the amount of the type of radioactivity that leaks from these vents through these thin walls is considered not so harmful or at a reasonable rate. And yet when there's a leak, what they're talking about is allowing more radioactive nuclides out, not just it was safe before there's no leaks. What they're saying is, I'm dumbfounded by just that bit of information. Every single nuclear waste container that's a thin wall canister is naturally releasing radioactivity into the air nonstop.
Certain types of radiation. It's got carbon-14 is one of them. One of our building blocks of life. But they claim that it's not a high. You can actually see they do measure the levels that are coming off of these containers, but they don't measure all the radionuclides when they do that. So yeah, that's a whole nother, definitely a whole nother.
The half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years.
Oh, you're so picky, Lonnie. So anyway, so they're claiming it doesn't go, it's a small amount, but they don't measure it. But they say it's a small amount. And anyway, Southern California Edison made a presentation recently where they're claiming, if we had a through wall crack in one of these canisters, it would just be a minor thing. It wouldn't be a big deal. I mean, so they're, just a little fissile material coming out that'll disperse in the environment. So their new plan is to hide leaks and then claim leaks are no big deal. That's their latest plan, which is just obscene. I mean, these are cans filled. Each one is filled with about, not an exact number, but about as much highly lethal cesium-137 as was released from the Chernobyl accident. This is not a minor stuff. And if you've got high burn of fuel in there, high burn of fuel is fuel that's burned about twice as long in the reactor than what they used to do. And that makes it become thermally hotter, over twice as thermally hot and over twice as radioactive. And it also builds up hydrides. High burn-up fuel builds up so you've got gases building up in these. So you get oxygen. You get oxygen in there, you have the potential for an explosion. And I have documented evidence on what I'm saying because it sounds so shockingly unbelievable. And the whole industry, even our safety advocates, were not aware of this information. So they had been thinking it would just be minor leaking, but that's not the case. When I do my research, I'll listen to the NRC meetings. learn some things. Then I go and I do my homework. I look for the technical source documents. That's why I'm a systems analyst, a researcher. This is my bailiwick, and then I consult with material engineers and nuclear physicists and say, hey, I'm reading this, and is this really true? Oh yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah, that is true. And so I verify this information with them. But so this is it's been a challenge getting this information out, because a lot of the experts people have been listening to did not have the data, especially with the high burnup fuel, to know what's really going on. So unless you do what I do and you get down and you actually read these technical documents, you're not going to hear about it. Now let's get back to the bill for a second. 3053. It's still important to outreach to your congressman. And it may not work with yours.
It's been placed on the calendar. It's number 259 on the calendar by the action of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
So they are going to vote on it.
Yeah, they're going to vote on this, and even if it goes, even if they pass it, this is an opportunity to get the information to them about what's really going on, about what they really signed. It's not a one-off that we're just going to tell these people things and everything's going to work. We need to get that information to them, and this is round one.
109 co-sponsors.
Right, and they don't even know what they're voting for. This bill will not. What the bill is going to do, it's going to give. They aren't even going to consider transport before they pick sites. They're going to give money to companies like Holtec to build a site, maybe in New Mexico, maybe in Nevada, and maybe a different company in Texas, to build a site to hold a whole bunch of nuclear waste from various decommissioned plants to start with. They're going to give them the money up front, even if no waste ever goes there. Now, there's no money that's been allocated anywhere for these consolidated interim storage facilities. No funds. The funds that we've been paying in our utility bills have been to decommission the plants when they shut down. That means tear down the buildings, not to pay for these interim storage costs. And the other part of the money we pay in goes to the federal government, to the Nuclear Waste Fund, and that money is designated only for a permanent repository, underground. One time you put it in the ground and that's it. There's no money for these interim dry storage facilities. These facilities, you're going to have to replace these canisters. It's going to be continuous. Continuously dealing with them. Zero money's allocated. Each one of these units costs about $4 million each. That includes the thin canister, the overpack, and the labor to load it. It doesn't even cover, transport or the disaster that's going to happen when these things start leaking. These things start leaking. I don't even know how they could get close to it to solve the problem. And
this is what stuns me. I mean, they have to have just checked out on the fact that this is nuclear waste, the most toxic, deadly waste ever created by mankind. They must have just 100% checked out on that.
Well, they're believing. Okay, you have. All right. Well, let me explain how this goes. All right. I was at a Diablo Canyon. Well, let me have people. If they want more information about issues with these bills and handouts and things, go to SanTanofreeSafety.org. It's the first thing right on the homepage. There's that action item. The next action item is we're working to have the Coastal Commission permit revoked that allowed 73 more of these thin wall canisters to be loaded. So there's an action item there. Please sign the petition for that. So we're working on that.
Does it matter if we're Californian or not?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. This is just to Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. And so we're trying to raise awareness on all these things. Let me switch gears and explain to you the problem here. People need to understand. It's just not a matter that, everybody just assumes, oh, it's because, your congressman is on the take and that's why. They truly do not know this stuff. I was at a Diablo Canyon Independent Safety Committee meeting. There's 3 engineers that are appointed by various government officials, and you can find this DCISC. Anyway, it's Robert Butnitz, Peter Lamb, and Per Peterson. They're all engineers. And I went to that. It's a lot better than our San Onofre community engagement panel meetings because these guys actually have an education in the field, and they were very open to. They allowed me to make a long presentation. They allowed interaction with them. So the format is excellent. I wish we had that at San Onofre. But I made one of the statements that I made in my presentation is that they only check radiation levels of the canisters quarterly, once every 4 months. And these panel members, they have been there for decades and listening to PG&E, and they didn't know this. And then after I said that, they called back up the PG&E guy and said, is that true? You only check radiation levels once every 4 months in these canisters? Yeah, and he eventually got around to saying that was true. And then he's claimed they had no damaged fuel assemblies. And I said, well, they have 13 damaged fuel assemblies, which means I don't have time to go into the meeting of that. And so that, again, we're going, well, then one of the panel members said, oh, well, maybe it's a different definition of damage, from the report you had, Donna, versus what PG&E used. And I said, well, this information was reported to the DOE by PG&E. So there was a whole series of things that this PG&E person had represented, even the thickness of the canisters. He didn't tell them they were only a half-inch thick. These guys have been sitting there for a decade, and and they didn't all know that these canisters were only a half-inch thick.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest shock is even just this request that they just approved. Just reading that request that they asked the NRC to approve, that PowerPoint put on by Arriva, right?
Right.
They approved this. They literally said elimination of cause of spurious alarms. This is only a 3-4 page document. It's not some big long thing. It's an outline.
Okay, just to be clear, that particular amendment for those canisters has not yet been approved by the NRC.
I get it, but the fact that they even have the nerve to ask for this is and there's probably, unless we really call the NRC and give them some pushback, this has a good likelihood of just being rubber stamped. We'll have a 30-day comment period, but they approved it for some other containers. Well, when you think about it, Donna, if they're thinking about passing H.R. 3053, if that sounds good to them, the Shimkus bill, what they're doing is normalizing nuclear waste and normalizing birth defects and cancer and mutations and death. That's what they're normalizing. Where are our elected officials? This is like grotesquely lazy efficient.
Now, I would not, truly, I can't stress important enough that they truly do not know or do not believe this information. They really don't. Now, I can't make.
They don't think that nuclear waste causes cancer.
They don't. They don't. They are believing that the waste is safely stored right now. This is what they are told by the experts. Even Union of Concerned Scientists tells them it's safe in dry storage. You know, so they've even got the ones that are supposedly independent telling them it's safe in dry storage. So, you know, I mean, I've met with Barbara Boxer's and Markey's technical expert a couple of years ago, and I tried to explain this stuff to her, and she goes, well, you know, we don't know this stuff. We have to trust our experts, and one of their experts is Union of Concerned Scientists. So it's a bit
and
a
Union of Concerned Scientists thinks that the nuclear waste is just not that harmful, that it's okay. They
believe it's safely stored in these thin wall containers.
It's venting 24 hours a day carbon-14, which is a radioactive decay that is known to cause cancer, and they also know that radioactivity is accumulative. The negative effects of low-level waste are most harmful.
Yeah, well, what the industry says is it won't get outside the plant boundary.
It's in the air. Hello? What are they thinking?
I'm telling you that this is the information.
I know.
I mean, you know,
this is why it's good that you can go to these meetings, because I
thing
go
is,
berserk.
but see, the thing is, you can't just go and say this. You know, if you're not a nuclear engineer, you don't have that kind of credibility. And when I try and get
studies that carbon-14 causes cancer.
Well, they don't know that carbon-14 is coming out of these containers, and then they're going to be told it's a minor amount, blah, 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 blah. So that, you know, this is what you're up against. So that the way to get their attention is you have to use their own information against them to get any attention. And you can't come across emotional or you get discounted. You know, it has to be about the facts and not the opinions. And, you know, at that meeting last week, I think it was October 19th at the Diablo Canyon Independent Safety Commission, you can watch the video. Starting at minute 22 is when PG&E makes their presentation about the waste. And then for a couple of hours after that, I make a presentation, and then there's a Q&A where I'll say something, and then
Hold on, I have to jump in. We have 30 seconds left. I cannot thank you enough for this conversation. I hope we can do it again sooner than later in the next maybe 3-4 weeks, because your voice is valuable and your logic is valuable, and it's tremendous. Please do go to santanofreesafety.org, all one word. Thank you, Donna Gilmore, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and you guys put your courage feet on. Take some action. Call your representatives. Don't let them get away with this.
If we don't do it, nobody else will.
Exactly. Thanks, Donna.